Hello, I am Adam Gibbs, and I am a life coach for people who struggle with stress, anxiety, limiting beliefs, and self-sabotage when it comes to getting to the goals and outcomes that you want for your life. This video is meant to act as a surface level video to kind of understand how and what it's like to interact and to be coached by me. And when we first start off, I'd like people to kind of get clear on the goals and desires that they have. And how we do that is I have on a board or on a Google Doc, I have a column that says towards, and on the other side it says away. And by noting down all the goals of everything you want to have, do, and become, as if you could just design your own life, we are getting clear on the direction in which you would like to go. And these goals are meant to be goals of inspiration, meaning things that you really want to work towards. Like there might be obviously obstacles in getting there and some challenges along the way, which in a manner of speaking, I kind of hope so that you have that growth that allows you to become that person, right? And when we look at the word inspiration, it means, if you look at it through the, I think it's the Greek root or Latin root, it means to breathe life into, right? It makes you excited to even just talk about the goal. On the other side, we have the away. And the away side is where things that we want to avoid, whether it be procrastination, maybe it's money problems, all these different things, the mental illnesses, things that you've dealt with your whole life or parts of your life that you just want to avoid having. And that is where we might have unintentionally some goals of desperation, right? Where it's like, I need to, I have to. The common one is maybe like, I have to, I need to lose weight or whatever. And what energy or what thoughts are behind the idea of like, I have to, I need to? It doesn't sound very exciting, right? It sounds rather kind of like it's sucking energy out of you, which is why it's a goal out of desperation. So I want people to have goals of inspiration that really breathe energy into you. And I am a coach that I want to have for you what I have for myself, which is the idea that the process of getting to the outcome or the goal that you have is as good, if not maybe even better than actually getting the outcome. And why that is because we now have research that explains that you're able to get more enjoyment out of the process and becoming the kind of person that the desired outcome that you want is a natural byproduct. It's naturally what you get when you are that person. And so I want to help people become the person that basically naturally attracts the desired outcome that you want for yourself, right? And so what if you're able to work towards the outcome that you want, but working towards that outcome was as enjoyable, if not even maybe more than the actual outcome. And why I say that is because once you get to that outcome that you really want, we have something in our bodies called adaptation that happens, right? Meaning that when you get there, you get used to it. You're like, okay, but now I want to reach more and more to the new heights and new goals and things, especially if you know how to get those. So for my coaching, I like to help people enjoy the process, meaning they are becoming, it's part of their identity, is what we're working towards. The next thing I want to talk about, and this has been an amazing tool for me, I still use it every day, is I'm very specific with the words I do use and the words I don't use. And so this is touching a little bit into the field of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. And the idea behind this is that the words we use in our everyday, this conversation, both with ourselves and others, sometimes we use words that below the surface that we're not really thinking about. It creates pressure subconsciously to us. And so if I say, for example, we have this thing we're going to do and it's going to take some hard work, how does that make you feel deep down? probably not super excited, depending on who you are. Maybe some people, they do like hard work, and maybe they feel the fulfillment that comes from that. But most of the people I've met, when it comes to hard work, they shrink away, right? And so there are words that we like to use, and I want to help people substitute with another word. And so one of the words is good and bad. Now, I'm not saying you're never saying these words again. I'm saying that in a common way that we use it, like, oh, that's a good person, or that's a bad person. I saw them, whatever it was that they were doing, like maybe they were yelling at another person. And so the idea is, well, maybe you don't know what that conversation was about, and maybe if you were them and you knew what was going on, then you'd be like, oh, I totally understand. I would be yelling too, so to speak. So it's kind of like we're using these words as if we know what's going on. And so instead of the words good and bad, unless it's something that's uplifting and encouraging, we use the words effective or ineffective. Now, why we use these words is because when you say, well, that's very effective, it kind of begs the question, well, effective for what, right? And so that kind of phrasing of things now is begging for increased clarity. And with all the words that you kind of substitute that I'm going to show you, they all do the same thing. And I believe that when you are clear in why you're saying what you're saying, and you know what it's associated with deep down, a lot of our negative self-talk tends to reduce. And so that's why I love this tool, because it's so simple. Once you get these new words substituted, you'll notice that your negative self-talk, your clarity of what you want and what you don't want will increase, which will lead to other things that have a ripple effect, and it will just turn out so much better. So the next word that we substitute, unless again it's encouraging or uplifting, is the word perfect. Now, the word perfect, as we know, has a lot of different associations when it comes to maybe quality, or maybe we want to like have perfect work when we're finished. However, a lot of the times whenever people are saying perfect, it can kind of come off as like, well, I'm not perfect. It's almost like this crutch that people use, like, just to get away from things because they're not perfect, a perfect person. And everyone has this, right? None of us are perfect. And so the word I actually like to substitute with this is the word consistent. And let me explain why. When we are saying I'm not perfect, we tend to be referring to some quality, moral, or value, right? It's I didn't maybe work very hard, or I was dishonest, or I made mistakes or whatever, right? We're not perfect. And so when we say, I'm sorry, I was not consistent there, I was inconsistent. Okay, well, where were you inconsistent in, so that we can identify why, and depending on the person, whether you want to or not, we can work on that inconsistency to allow you to be uplifted and have more power, right? That's where we want to go. And so the next one, as I kind of said before, is that the word hard. How does that make you feel, right? And so when I think of the word hard, I think of two things if we kind of dissect that word. I think of skill and perceived reward, right? Because if something is really challenging, meaning that you don't yet have the skills for it, and maybe even you don't have a lot of perceived reward behind it, you're not really going to want to go and do that thing. However, if something is challenging or hard, but you have a lot of perceived reward from it, this comes from like guys that maybe like to play video games. It's a new game, you got to learn how to play, but if they really enjoy it, their skill level just rises really quickly because their perceived reward, what they're gaining and learning, and that growth feels really good. Now, we can also have things that are low perceived reward and high skill, like maybe you're really good at your job, but it's just become boring. It's just, you know how to do it, but you're just done, and you feel kind of burnt out and you're just done with it. And so you might kind of lean back and be like, I don't want to do that. So hard to me is kind of dissected in that way. And so another word that we can use for hard is challenge or growth opportunity. The next word is should, right? This actually is a pretty common word that people are trying or attempting to get rid of. And it's funny because the root of the word should is shame. And that's not necessarily a place that most people want to be, right? And so the word we can substitute with should is could or might. Because when you say you should do this, well, it's like, well, how do you know? Like, you don't know really anything, especially when it comes to other people's lives. Even if you know them really well, sometimes you think you know things about them, but the world is a very complex place. And so unless you know every single detail, it's probably unwise to say, like, I'm the person who knows what you should do. Instead, we can use the word could or might, meaning this could be helpful, it might be helpful, because what are they after? And how do they know that what they want is actually what they want? A lot of us go after goals and we get there and it's like, that wasn't as satisfying as I thought it'd be. I actually don't want this, right? And so we're on different paths that can change at any moment. The more information and clarity we have on things, and a lot of us don't have that information and clarity because of fear or anxiety or stress, a number of different things. There's a lot of distractions in life we just don't know. The next word that I'd like to substitute is always and never, right? The absolutes, like you always do this or you never do that, right? Well, that's not very helpful because it's going to start teaching your brain to look for times when they always or never do that thing, or I always and never do that thing. And so instead we want to replace that with you often or you sometimes or maybe even rarely do those things, because humans don't tend to operate off of absolutes, right? There's very few of them. And when we do that, it can be very defeating for both ourselves and other people, which how likely are people going to change when they look at themselves like, oh, I never do this, or I always do that? It doesn't come with a very good or empowering feeling or position in which you want to go forward and work on your goals, right? The next word is the word problem. And so we associate a lot of like scary things, like we have a problem, like, ooh, what's this gonna be? And so the words that we can substitute for that is challenge or, again, opportunity, right? Because if we have a problem, really a problem is where we kind of often want to be a lot of the times, because when we are in the pursuit of finding solutions, we are in a state, hopefully, of creativity. And that creativity allows us to build something and grow from those experiences and expand, and that is where life is good, right? The next word we want to replace is failure. Again, it depends on where you're kind of putting this word, but most people associate failure with a scary feeling, fear, anxiety, I'm not good enough, right? It's a lot of feelings that we don't really want to have. And so we can replace that with a learning experience or feedback, because failure, really all that is just data for us. In fact, like that saying goes, like we learn more when we fail versus when we succeed. And if we're all about growth and expansion, failure for sometimes can be a great place to be, because we can get a lot of data and we can retry and try again. The next word is the word lazy. Now, a lot of us feel like at some points like, oh, during this part of the day, I get so lazy. Sometimes that's not the actual correct word that we use. It's actually kind of inaccurate in terms of what you're actually doing. Because as we know, rest and relaxation, they're actually very important for the body. You're not being lazy. It's a very functional purpose in which we are sometimes resting. Obviously, like when we're asleep. When you're going to bed, are you really being lazy? No, we're actually getting the necessary sleep for us to be able to do things later on the next day. And so when it comes to laziness, it tends to be more that you're lost and you're not lazy. And so the words that we can substitute for that are unmotivated, or lacking direction. Like I said, that you are lost. The last words that are huge and most everyone uses, I feel like, are the words have to and need to. And why I don't like these is because although you might say, well, I have to cook for my kids, I have to do this or that, and you feel like there's these huge consequences, like I have to graduate, I have to go after this job, I need this or that. It provides a lot of pressure. Do you kind of feel that pressure when you say, I have to do this, I need to do this? It might even be something good, but a lot of times we associate have to with all this pressure again, and that's not very helpful. Not to mention, you have free agency. You don't have to do anything, right? So again, the words we could substitute with that are, this would be helpful or effective, or could be somewhere where I want to go, right? Because when we get clear on the direction, a new path could come up at any moment, right? When we get more information, you're going towards your outcome, your goal might shift and change. In fact, a lot of the times when people are actually good at achieving their goals, sometimes their goals shift a little bit more, or it could be a lot, because they get more information and they learn how challenging it might be or how easy. If something's really easy, you might want to make it more challenging for the sake of yourself and growth. If something's too challenging, you might want to lower the difficulty so that's actually easier for you to do. So the idea where I have to do something, I need to do something, and even to your gun to your head, technically you can choose where you want to go, right? It has obviously a cause and effect, it has a consequence to the action. And most of the time when people say I have to do this, I need to do this, they're stemming back from the previous experiences. Have people not done things in other different ways that maybe you just haven't seen or tried before? And so you don't have to or need to do something. It can be helpful or it can be effective. The next tool I want to teach you is something that I call brain dump. Now, this is a very common tool. Many people use it, and not enough people actually do it, though they might have heard it. And so there's different versions of this, so you might have known of a previous version, and it may have helped, may not have helped that much. Personally, I have a time in my week when I like to do a brain dump. And what this is that our voice in our head, sometimes we have the mistake thinking it's us. The voice in our head is not us, and I'm not talking about the voice when you're reading a book. And I know some people say they don't have a voice in their head. I'm talking about the people who, when you read a book, you have like that voice in your head. I'm not talking about that voice. I'm talking about the voice that kind of says like, I'm not good enough, or are they mad at me? Like those kind of different conversations that you have in your brain with that silent voice in your head. That silent voice in your head says a lot of things most days. And just like when we're having a conversation, if you're talking, and how I do this in a live session is I'll actually get up and I'll walk around or do something to make it seem like I'm not really sitting down focused with the person. And when I come to sit back down and I ask them, how did you feel talking to me about that? And they're like, well, talking, but you were moving around or whatever. Unless we're actually taking the time to note down what the voice in our head is saying, just like another person, they might start to get louder. They might start and try to really get our attention, and they might bring up more and more, and they'll speak faster or whatever it is. And unless we take time to have a conversation with that voice in our head, the brain dump, the amount of talk in your head could be so overwhelming. And so taking that time to get down the silly, pathetic, scary, weird things your voice is saying is going to quiet that voice down, and it actually can often have some pretty important things to tell you. And getting down to the clarity behind those items often brings us a lot of value that we're just not paying attention because we're not used to talking to the voice in our head. And so a brain dump can be very helpful for that. I also like to ask people to name the voice in their head. And I don't mean like the name of like an enemy, because the voice in your head, despite it maybe saying mean things to you, is actually your ally. And it's your ally because it wants to protect you, it wants to keep you alive. And yet, to me, that says an ally, right? And so I have them give whatever name that they want. Mine is called Sam. And I just say, oh, hey, Sam, how's it going? Or whatever. And I write down what Sam is saying to me. And then when we have down those thoughts, we can start to ask questions, and we can start to maybe even make new goals or kind of shift things around how we're going to respond back. And remember, the voice in your head, it knows kind of like who you are. And so when you want something, the voice in your head, it's kind of like a businessman. For it to change the way it talks to you, you need to supply it, it's helpful to supply it information that, like, you're making a business deal where it's worth it to them. They foresee the benefits and the consequences to, like, okay, this is a good deal or whatever. That can help change the voice in their head. Another thing I want to teach you is something called a vision board of steps. Now, a lot of people have a vision board, meaning they have a picture of that outcomes and things that they desire for what they want for their future. Now, just putting down an outcome that you want can actually be very detrimental and actually backfire, because your brain looks at the outcome and sees where you are. It's like, we're not even close to there. We're not even maybe in the process of making that happen, right? And so it actually will increase the amount of time that you self-sabotage, and you will actually find it more challenging. And so what I have people do is I have a vision board. You can kind of maybe have like where you want to go, but I have a vision board of the steps that are necessary, right? Because again, it's about the process getting to the outcome, not just the having it. Because again, we have adaptation. So it's about the becoming the person you want to be. It's tied to your identity. Having that outcome is tied to your identity. And so having that vision board of steps and taking time to get clear on what those steps are, you can look at it and be like, okay, these are the things that I practice to help become part of my nervous system, to how I respond, to how I think and how I do things, and I become this new person. Literally, a part of you has to die for this new person to have the outcome that you want, right? These habits, it's necessary for them to change if you want the outcome. And so having that outcome along with like, okay, what might I need to do? What are the steps that would lead to that? And maybe those steps are kind of off, you're not totally sure, but at least give yourself a direction that when you go and things maybe start to fail and you get more information, like, oh, actually it's better if I go this way or do this way. And I have maybe mentors or teachers that have done it before. That's why it's so helpful to have mentors, is that they can tell you, these are the steps that I did. This is the path that I took to get to the outcome that you want and that I wanted. And doing these new goals and habits can be a challenge, right? It's a brand new thing for a lot of people to start this new process and to try and work towards something they've maybe never done, which brings up a lot of threat. And your brain does not like threat to the point where it's going to self-sabotage you. It's going to distract you, do everything you can to attempt to keep you safe, even though you're not running away from a tiger or anything. And so a productivity tool or strategy that I use is called the 5-minute rule. Because when it comes to procrastination and not doing things, I believe it's because knowing that the brain loves to conserve energy, we therefore know that what you're doing right now, the brain wants to keep doing, right? Because it's just like a train. You know, when the train starts to go, it's like really pushing, and it starts to get slow, it goes slower, slower, then faster and faster and faster, and it picks up the momentum, right? I believe that our brain works somewhat the same way. That when you just give a new task 5 minutes, you're allowing that train of attention and focus to get its momentum going, get it going so that you can actually stick with it easier, and it's no longer trying to exert a lot of energy because it has that momentum. And so the 5-minute rule really can help with that. And I think for now, I will stop there just to give you a little idea of what a coaching session might kind of look like. This is kind of more surface level. Usually we go deeper, and it's a lot more fun because I'm not the one talking the whole time. So I hope this allowed some value for you. And if you want, you can schedule a session with me or ask for a link to schedule a session with me. And I hope that I can really help you become the person you want to be. Have a good day.